Hello, this is Shelly Cormier. I'm from the Office of Multicultural Learning, and this is Word on the Street. So a little bit about myself. I use she, her pronouns. I'm very excited to be your new lead to this podcast. We also have a guest in this podcast from the MCC. Super exciting. Yeah, I'm from Washington State. I participate in D1 athletics, cross country and track. And yeah, I'll let Alex kind of introduce himself.
Hi, my name is Alejandro Gonzalez. I work for the Multicultural Center at Santa Clara University. I'm the Youth Empowerment Program Coordinator. A little bit about what I do for that is I give tours to students in the area to show them the opportunities they could have at SU in the future. I'm also a communications major, pronouns he, him. I forgot to mention that earlier. And currently I'm considering emphasis on studying leadership and interaction and social interaction just because I want to continue working with kids in the future, and it's what I'm passionate about.
Yeah, thanks for the intro. It was really good to hear about all the fun shit that you do. So today's main agenda, we're going to talk about the inquiries of why do women have different experiences with interacting with healthcare. So women are, half of our population. It's just interesting that we are treated very differently and have different experience with interaction of healthcare. So I kind of wanted to explore that with you, and we can kind of talk through the facts and information that I've learned and research. So
yeah, we had a small conversation about it the other day, and even the little bit of information you were telling me then, it was shocking just because how can you not serve 50% of the population when it comes to medical treatment?
Period. So yeah, I guess we're going to do why is medicine having a lack of research on females in general. This is kind of based off of whatever information that I was able to scrounge up by research.
Give yourself more credit. You did research.
I did do some research. Yeah, so let's see here. Women are less represented in healthcare research. These are a few treatments available for women, specific diseases. General diseases treatment may be less effective for women or have worse side effects. So in general, medications kind of can take differently to women's hormones in general because a lot of medical training processes, when you go through trials, they weren't allowed to be a part of them until 1977 or was more promoted to be part of these trials within medicine. So that whole time, all throughout those medical trials, they weren't able to participate. So we actually don't know a lot of the effect on medicine on women and a lot of different side effects that can kind of pop up.
So before the 1980s, it was just a hit or miss for medicine.
Yeah. It was good luck.
Yeah.
We studied this only purely on men, but, let's see how it works out for you. Yeah, and
I would be scared.
Yeah, they did a clinical research, which was male-directed. Medical research by default was male-led in general, so the Physician of Health study examined the effects of aspirin on cardiovascular diseases, which involved 22,000 participants, and not a single participant was a woman.
Something about aspirin is just something people take every single day. Some people take it a lot just to stave off a headache or whatever.
Yeah, did you know the number one cause for women's death is cardiovascular? So it's the number one death for women is heart attack.
I did not know that.
Yeah, so why aren't they have any women looking at this study? I know people are going to say mostly they didn't very much discourage it and didn't allow it because women, if you had a possibility of carrying a child, that was the main one, because you could affect the child you're going to birth in the future or whatever in the process, if you're trying to become pregnant or something. So that was one of the main things that was very caused kind of this setback, but also at the general in general then it means there's just lack of research, and then I also think that could be a worse cycle of issues that would come up from that.
Well, like you said, the study before, the effect aspirin has on cardiovascular disease. If cardiovascular diseases are affecting women the most, then they needed to do more research into that to cause less death and make sure there is actual research on it.
Period. Yeah, apparently according to the Office of Women's Health, in 1977, FDA issued a guideline banning most women of childbearing potential from participating for clinical research studies. So, yeah, because a lot of drugs could be causing of serious birth defects. sex, and that was the main thing, which is a valid, fair thing. So, like, that's how we would we navigate that in general. Like, I think in general, it's like you want to make sure we include women in these studies, but then also being conscious of their health as well without, like, but you know what I mean? Like, where's that line? Like, I have no idea where you could draw that. Yeah, so a lot of the other issues that women are, like, unfairly represented in clinical studies because women are both, like, disadvantaged to the amount of, like the FDA in the 1977, but also because if women are not necessarily involved with creating these trials, women tend not to show up in the medical trials. So, like, a lot of these medical trials that are led by men, so usually they're led by, you know, med conditions or side effects. So I think now, like, generally they're trying to do better about incorporating women into medicine, but because there's such a gap in medical history for women, it's hard to close it, and especially that in general women already have a stigma in medicine and just lead them to have an inability to get the care they need.
Well, there's one thing I see hope for in the future. I know a lot more females in STEM now than I have ever before, honestly. Like, I talk to a lot of my friends, and a lot of them say, like, they're like neuroscience classes and stuff are woman-dominated, which is great. So I think that gap has potential to close and can close.
Yeah, but there's also, like, so many factors that kind of close that gap. Like, you know, it's like we are constantly in history trying to close that gap between the disparities of inequality, but there's so many things that, like, cut it off. So yeah, maybe there's more women that are going to be incorporated STEM, but when in the workforce in general, they might be treated with sexual harassment or having a lot of these barriers that lead them to not succeed or, like, climb up the ladder within the career they're doing because of these disadvantages of perception and disadvantages of, in general, being discouraged constantly. So it's hard for women to necessarily thrive in an environment that feels like it's constantly being pushed down and, like, ignored or dismissed. And in general, like, if you talk about even, like, family dynamics are a huge part of showing the disparity that's happening, that mothers usually do traditionally more of the domestic work. And even if they do say they're, like, a quote-unquote egalitarian marriage, which is a marriage that's kind of, like, split up into, like, both partners do equal amount of tasks. So maybe the partner does clean and maybe the other partner does do laundry and the other partner does finances, or they both do it. So that's more of an egalitarian marriage, but most people in, like, traditional marriages are called, like, you know, the father's the bread maker and the mother is, you know, stays at home, cooks, cleans, takes care of the kids. And that kind of mindset kind of leads into those also disparities that's created, because even if women start excelling in becoming a more, like, reaching equality and getting these disparities, they still end up with a whole bunch of barriers. So now, like, women can work, right? There's a huge amount of women working. But if we look at when they come home, they have the quote-unquote second shift. Have you ever heard of that? It's a reference of a novel. I have not heard that term, honestly. So it's this woman, she wrote a book. It was called The Second Shift, and basically she explains this concept of when women come back from work, they work a second shift of taking care of the family. So the moment they get home, they start cooking dinner. The moment they get home, they start doing laundry. The moment they get home, they start telling their kids to do homework, clean up their room. Like, they're doing the extra work. They're doing a second quote-unquote job of managing.
My mom needs to read this book.
Yeah, it's a very interesting, like, a lot of women take it as normality, but in this case, it doesn't have to be. Like, splitting up task and work, you can totally do that with a spouse, but it just needs to be communicated. Because if you have these expectations that some men feel like, because I'm bringing in the money, I don't have to do any other task. Like, I don't have to do, because that's the expectation for men to have, just doing the work and bringing the money, not to take care of the kids. And I guess, like, marriages are becoming more egalitarian, but these traditional roles are still being seeped in. Like, just like I said, the second shift, women coming home from work. That's a very realistic situation, which they come back and they take care of the kids.
Yeah, when I was younger, my mom used to come back, cook, clean every single day. I'm the youngest of three boys. Like, she definitely had this experience, and that's why I want to bring this book up to her, because I think, well, one, she loves to read, and then two, I think she would just find the content like a good read.
Yeah, so recommend The Second Shift. It's about working families and a revolution of the shift of dynamics within family structures. It's by, like, Arlene Russell Hochschild. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. But yeah, it was originally published in 1989. But I think it's a very interesting book reflecting over the kind of a sociology kind of perspective and kind of looking in depth about where women sit in the family structure.
Yeah, and it also, I think this goes back into your other point of the many hurdles women face when trying to succeed.
Yeah, honestly. So kind of going back to our main question, another concern that a lot of the time happens is that women manifest symptoms differently than men. So commonly women are like very much misdiagnosed in medicine. So like heart attack symptoms are different. Like that's why women don't actually get the help sometimes they do when they have a heart attack, because they manifest different symptoms than men when they have heart attacks.
Oh, that's actually the first time I've ever heard that.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, like I think there's a lot of stories about it, about women just being like, oh, I had a heart attack. They didn't, like, because they manifest symptoms differently. So doctors were like, no, you're good.
No, you're not having a heart attack. I'm in your body, you can tell.
Period. Like, literally, anytime that women go into the medical field, like, I have to brace myself to defend myself. Like, I had a lot of experience, like, going into kind of medical environments because I've had, like, 2 knee surgeries. Like, I tore my ACL. And, like, in general, like, I've been through, like, a lot of, like, random sickness. I had acid reflux, and they could not diagnose it. So they said I had allergies, but I had acid reflux. I didn't know what it was. They're like, yeah, you have allergies. And I was like, okay.
I don't think allergies make you throw up.
Well,
or
acid
like,
reflux, like, it just makes you feel like you're gonna, like, sorry for the details, guys. It just feels like something's, like, climbing up your throat, and you're, like, you have this acidic thing, and you're really, really nauseous. And I was having this. I couldn't eat anything without, like, feeling nauseous, like, really, really sick. So I was like, what is this? And I went to the doctor, like, 3 to 4 times, and then finally they're like, you have acid reflux. I was like, that was the simplest answer you could have given me. And the whole time they're like, are you pregnant? I was like, come on.
It's my
like
throat.
I was like, I'm really, because they always, like, medicine, they always think when you are nauseous, like a woman's nauseous, she's automatically pregnant. That's the first thing they test. I got literally had pee in a cup for acid reflux. That's ridiculous. And actually, before my surgeries, they always make you pee in a cup to check if you're pregnant. And even if you say no, you have to sign a freaking, like, paper that says, I'm signing not to do this. Isn't that crazy? Have you had any, like, negative experience with medicine? Like,
No, I've actually, like, every time I've gone to the doctor, it's just been pretty chill. I also, I'm not gonna lie, I do avoid the doctor. If I'm sick, I do power through sometimes.
We're all like that, especially you got those medical bills. Yeah. Let's not get started on
if you're seriously
medical
hurt
bills.
or in an emergency, do go to the hospital, go see a doctor.
Period. We're not promoting anything that is not in that realm. The research is lacking just from the case of the fact that women weren't allowed in the medical trials mainly, and also just from the aspect of stigmas add up, and I think in general not having as many women doing those type of studies. I think those are, like, different directions of why women aren't able to, we're not, like, showing up more in medicine. I think the world is getting better at, like, fixing that. Like, there's also a lot of, like, lack in people of color into medicine and, like, having their reactions go, and, like, especially dermatology. So, like, you know, like, how
dermatology is so different for everybody too.
Exactly. Like, skin colors makes an impact. Specifically in dermatology, there's a lot of disparities within, you know, the POC community within skin color, because, like, melanoma usually shows up differently in darker skins or lighter skins, and a lot of dermatologists can't really, like, pick out the differences if you see, like, different skin tones. So, like, usually when you have, like, a fear of, like, some type of cancerous, you know, skin cancer, you have any signs about it, usually you should go to a doctor who, like, that sees people of color if you're a person of color. So.
This is actually something I do have an experience on. So when I was younger, I was diagnosed with tuberous sclerosis. I don't have it anymore, but pretty much what this does is it grows non-cancerous lumps across your body. So when I was younger, they were trying to figure out I also have an autoimmune disorder. So between that and the autoimmune disorder where when I get injured and, like, my skin pigments back, it doesn't pigment back the proper color. So if you look across my body, like, I have a lot of random white spots. So between that, birthmarks, and the autoimmune disorder, like, they could not diagnose me when I was younger. So it was, like, a lot of stress for my mom. She told me there was a lot of weeks she would be crying while I was just, like, sitting in the back seat, and she was taking me to the doctor, and I didn't know what was going on.
You were just like, bump skin.
Yeah, I was just like, I got some bumps, and now they're gone, and now I just got white spots, bro. Yeah, but it definitely does take them longer to diagnose.
Yeah, POC people. It's hard. Honestly, I feel like most of the time, it's, like, when you are there for the medical reason is just waiting for an answer. And that can be really...
I think it's also U.S. healthcare in general. It takes a longer time than other places across the world. Like, I've heard from my family members in Mexico, like, their medical systems, like, processes are a lot quicker.
Oh, yeah, really?
Yeah.
I actually had no idea. I think, in general, to, like, what we can do in the scenario of just, like, trying to close this gap is make sure we, like, have diverse representation in research and clinical trials. I think it's a main important factor to help move forward in creating, you know, more diverse information with not just only females, but people in general, about races, ethnicities, stuff like that.
Yeah, just so we can serve more of the world medically.
Yeah, I think we need to be more funding toward these things and more awareness, including, you know, making more inclusive clinical trials, and we should have policy advocations, and, you know, people should be aware of these issues, so campaign awareness.
Yeah, I feel like this is something that hasn't really been brought to the attention of most people, because a lot of the facts you're bringing to me are things that I'm hearing for the very first time.
Yeah, I honestly, a lot of people, like, I feel like people know there's disparities, but they just don't know the specifics. Like, a lot of the time when it comes to anything that's detailed within women's experience of inequalities, they just kind of know they're there, but they just don't know what it is. So there's a book called Invisible Woman, and it's a really great book. And it really talks about the inequalities, like the specific inequalities. Like, one of them talks about how the inequalities in, like, cars and how they're built for men to be driving. In the passenger seat, it's built for women. So in a car accident, when you get an accident, that's why women are, like, it's like 40% more likely to die from a car accident. Just the structure of the car, because it was built for men. So they only test on, like, guys, like,
yeah,
like the quote-unquote, whatever, like, the dummy they have. They only test, like, guys' kind of height, body composition, stuff like that.
Oh, so, like, airbag safety and everything.
Yeah, exactly. That's why seatbelts don't always sit really well on women's chest either, because we have breasts. So you have two layers of both the airbags not working for you and both the seatbelt not fitting correctly. And women are actually more likely to get whiplash because their neck and how their compositions are. So they don't think about these extra things that would also need to be supported for women. And I think it's really hard, like, searching for a car, like, especially, like, as a smaller person. Like, I'm, like, 5'1", and, like, when I go search for a car, like, when I can't fit in any of, like, German brands or anything that's European, like, I won't fit in the car. Like, I will have to, like, stand to look behind me to, like, in the back seat. But if I'm, like, in, like more, like, Asian brand cars, I realize that, like, I fit better composition because, like
Toyotas?
Yeah, because, like, they're more of, like, served for the Asian community, and Asian community would have the compositions are usually shorter, smaller frames. So the interesting thing is, like, those compositions of, like, the trials that they go through is, like, disproportionate. So women are actually just more likely to die in car accidents just because of that. They're meant to sit in the passenger seat, not the driver's seat, apparently.
You've shocked me.
You've been astonished.
I was like, you looked at me to say something, and I was just like, I don't even know, because you just dropped a bomb that, like, and it makes so much sense.
Yeah.
The fact that, whenever you look at those crash test dummies, too, they're always, like, around, like, 5'8", and, like, just, like, there's no features on them. It's just, like, a random human body.
Yeah, but recently they have been actually incorporating female dummies into the cars, but just recently. And I think they're trying to get better at it, but, like, hey, there's a step in the right direction. Yeah. And I think, in general, we don't think about women's safety in cars, and I think we need to really keep in tune, because a lot of people, at least in, like, America in general, they all drive. Like, at least where, like, certain areas I were, like, public transportation is really crappy. Like, well, at least, like, unless you're, like, the city, like, certain parts of the city or in the East Coast where they have a lot more better transportation, like, you need a car to get everywhere. So
I'm from Los Angeles. You definitely need a car to get everywhere. So it's just, like, it's crazy to me that everybody thinks they're just safe driving around in their cars, but some people are just less safe than others for no reason.
Yeah, actually, you're more disadvantaged when you're a woman driving in a car. Because also women tend to lean forward in the car because they can't see. Because they're not composition. Like, there's, like, a whole bunch. There was, like, a meme online that you could tell it's a woman driver because her hands are on the wheel and she's, like, leaning forward. It's because the composition of the car does not fit the woman.
That makes so much sense.
Period. That's what I'm saying. I think there's, like, little things, little underlying inequalities that people don't look at. Like, just, like, when it comes to medicine, like, getting medical care. People think everybody should get medical care, but they don't get equal medical care. So when it comes in, talking about pain or talking about anything, they'll either be like, oh, you're just overreacting, or like if a woman's not presenting as like facial like pain, like, oh my gosh, like, ow, it hurts, like they'll be like, oh, she's less in pain. But women are pretty good at like hiding pain, in my opinion, because also they go through menstrual cycles every month, you know, like they're used to pain and discomfort. So if they visibly don't show it, it doesn't necessarily mean you're experiencing less pain. Especially like when it comes to guys in the medical field, like guys will be like, oh, he's in so much pain because he's yelling and screaming.
What's so funny is if you ask tattoo artists who takes pain better, they always say woman.
Period. There's reasons for that. And I think we can kind of expand on this issue is like painkillers for getting birth control. So, you know, like
I actually
IUD.
don't think I've ever had painkillers.
Really?
No.
Really? Oh. Well, so women, when they get birth control, their option for birth control is an IUD, which a lot of people talk about. And a lot of women talk about their experience of getting an IUD inserted, and it is so painful. Women pass out during this process. Women are in excruciating pain. And I had a friend who actually had a story about this. So she got an IUD, and she was experiencing severe pain, like severe pain. And she was like, okay, that's weird. But then the people are like, no, it's fine. It's like normal. It's normal.
I feel like I know where this is going.
Yeah. And so basically she continues. She's having really bad side effects from this thing. And she's like, oh my God, I just need to get this out. So she goes out, gets it taken out. She finds out the IUD did not fit like her like uterus like area or whatever. Yeah, it was too big. So it was like crushing. Like it was just very painful. Like it was like digging in or something. And like it was
No.
it didn't fit. Yeah, exactly. And she was like being like, hey, I have an issue. This really hurts. They're like, it's fine. And she dealt with that for months until she got it out. And
months?
Yeah, because people keep telling you it's normal. And most people, like, as a woman, like, when I was told about IUDs, they're like, oh, it sucks for the first couple months and you're fine. Yeah, because it lasts, like, 8 years or something. So they're like, oh, if the first couple months is a little, like, loopy.
You're just uncomfortable for 3 months of your life?
More than that sometimes. Like, it's hard transition for women in, like, birth control. Like, it doesn't sit well.
Why is this a procedure?
I have no idea. And yeah, so they don't give you painkillers for that.
This should not be normal to just be out of it for 3 months.
Yeah, it is supposed to be, apparently. And so, you know how, like, men get vasectomies and they're, like, given, like, anesthesia, and, like, they're treated so well and nice. They're like, do you want a snack after your procedure? Like, some juice? Like, girl gets her IUD in and they're like, all right, you're all good to go. And then the guy for the
a little high five. Yeah, like, you got it.
You got it. And like for the vasectomy, they're like, I mean, they're
aren't
like
most good dudes like good after a vasectomy after like a week or something. I don't know any facts on vasectomy.
Pyramid, like it's like literally after a week they're fine. And yeah, they give local anesthesia. Usually they get to stay after the procedure for a couple hours to like rest up a little bit, or someone has to drive them home. Like, it's a whole thing. Like, women will...
use your legs. It's fine.
Women will fully go get their IUD by themselves and drive home. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just so funny that, like, these experiences, the treatment of it's so different. And, like, I'm glad that men are given this treatment. Like, I'm not gonna, like, say they shouldn't get this treatment. They have to endure the pain. But I'm saying women shouldn't have to endure the pain.
Yeah, it's just like, where's this treatment for you guys?
I know, and I think those are the little inequalities. Like, that's the main theme. Those are just little things that people don't realize build up. Like,
yeah, this is day-to-day struggles. Driving and going to the doctor. Like, this is things everybody does.
Yeah, and you have to. And it's like everything part of your life feels like a battle. I'm not gonna lie. I feel like my identity as a woman in general, like, I feel like I have gotten, of course, like, the comments, the things, and, like, I feel like I've had barriers multiple times in my life that told me that I couldn't do it just because I was a woman. And it's just weird because when I was younger, like, when you're a kid and you're like 6 years old, you're like, why can't I do it? Like, you don't have that conceptual idea of what social structure is, like, what they expect you as these like gender roles and like expectations. Like, I had no idea. So when I was younger, funny story, I come up to my parents and I said, I want to be a football player. I'm 6 years old. I don't know why I want to be a football player.
But you wanted to.
I want to be a football player. They said, no, Shelly, you're not going to be a football player. And I was like, no way. Like, why can't I? Because they're like, because. I was like, give me a reason. So I go to my room. I prepare a speech. This is what I do at 6 years old. I prepare a speech to fight my way to be a football player. So I come in and I start my speech. This is the only thing I remember. I had a dream.
You took inspiration, clearly.
I literally did. I said I had a dream that I would be able to do this, and I was capable of doing it. And it brought literally my parents to tears. Like, don't know why. Like, randomly. And they said, yes, you could play football. They never signed me up. But I made my point clear and said, you know what I mean? Like, you have these, like, limitations, and you're just unaware of them. Like, I think in general, it's just, like, when you're young like that, you just think you could do everything. And when someone says you can't, you are hit with this force, and you're like, why can't I? And then it's like, it's because of this. And then it feels like it encapsulates your identity. Like, I was part of a cross-country team in high school. I was the captain, and I was the fastest girl on our team. And a lot of time I ran with the boys on the team just because I did workouts with them. Like, it was just easier, so I wouldn't run alone. So when I did that, I'd always get these, like, little micro comments toward the guys on the team because they also felt threatened for a woman to be able to run with them. Just saying. And I would get, like, little comments being like, oh, you're never going to be as fast because you're woman or
Until
girl.
you beat them, though.
Literally, it's just like, come on, like, don't do this. Like, you really don't need to say this. But people actually will come up to you and say this type of stuff. They'll be, you are incapable because of this. And I'm like, honestly, let's be realistic. There is realistic standards in place, but I also think, like,
You can't just shut someone down just because you think they can do something. They can't do something. Like, that is up to the person if they can do something or not. Like, people know their own limits. You can't decide other people's limits.
Exactly. And I think a lot of the time women are just basically told what your limit should be. You should only excel at this. You should only excel at this. And I think, this is a conversation is being more prevalent about the inequalities in general from, the Barbie movie. I didn't personally watch it yet, but I'm glad that these conversations are coming up and glad that we're showing and, like, opening up the fact that there are these, like, weird structures that are in place that don't necessarily need to be there and only prohibit people's identities.
Yeah. I honestly had a little epiphany when you just said, like, women are always told what our limits are. I feel like that. So I work with kids, and one thing I see is kids are always told by their parents what their limits are, and that's one thing I try to break. Like, I want a kid to think they have no limits, because if a kid thinks they have no limits, then they will reach out, they will go to their full potential, and they will try to be something more. Mm-hmm. So it's like, why are you treating women like kids? Like, what are you doing?
Period. That was a beautiful statement. Yeah, I think in general, it's going to be a struggle to get to where we need to be, but I think our society is moving in a good direction. Like, I can see it going in a way where people stop putting as many limitations. Like, people are literally starting, like, getting their kid and not even gendering them until they get older, until they're like 6 or 5.
Yeah.
Because that's 6 to 5 is when kids know or have an understanding of their gender or identity. So, like, usually, like, that's why when you're, like, in elementary school, they're like, oh, those are boys' activities. Boys have cooties. Like, that's, like, the aspect they know how to differentiate between the two, because that's, like, when the age that they actually know or are aware of these gender structures. That's why, like, kids, when they're young, will play house or, like, traditional roles and stuff like that. So it's a very interesting thing that is good to be going and helping the kids understand these concepts and not knowing that these boundaries are based off of societal, but if they want to fit in a different area, they can. And I think, yeah, like I was trying to say, is that, like, some people are having kids and not gendering them until they're, like, 6 or 7 or older anyways.
Letting them get their own sense of what
identity.
Norms are.
Yeah, and they're growing up with just they, them pronouns. That's literally, the first part of their life is just they, them. If they want to continue they, them, or they want to continue, like, they can decide what they want. And it's hard to actually not gender your kid, like, in general. Like, first, like, the blankets, the furniture, all of it's, like, very much gendered colors, the toys, everything, like Barbie toys, or, like, there's
if you
toys.
Look at commercials too.
Exactly, everything's tailored.
Yeah.
Like, gender structures are tailored in, like, every aspect of your life. Like, things, like, we can name and list off things that women are associated with, like wine,
Barbies,
coffee, Barbies, like
pink,
teachers, like a lot of
childcare,
childcare. Anything that deals with childcare. And that is also another issue, that childcare is not giving the specific amount of payment and funding that they should give, because they see childcare as a very female woman type of, just a woman thing. So they're like, oh, we can just lower the prices for it, like getting pay. So they have lower pay too. Anything that deals with childcare will have lower pay because that's, like, more of a domestic work so they don't think it owes more.
I'm literally in charge of their children. Give me your money. No, I'm joking.
Give me your money.
I am taking care of your kids. No, I'm joking.
Yeah, it's a hard job. That's the whole point of this, is like childcare is not an easy thing. So, you know.
If you ever worked with kids, you have 20 stories, even if there was just one day.
Honestly, kids are just, they're another thing.
They make me laugh, though.
Yeah.
They really make me laugh.
They are silly, goofy.
Yeah. Kids are malleable. They're the future, so you can kind of teach them to be whatever. And you can let them decide that for themselves, what that whatever is.
You know what's interesting, though? Because this brings up the thought that, like, when we want to open and diversify the mindset, we go to the kids, right? To, like, hey, this is the new norm. But isn't it feel like we're constantly, like, indoctrinating every time?
See, I'm not indoctrinated. Like, I get what you mean. Sometimes it does feel like that when a kid asks me a question and I give them my answer, because, like, they're really looking for what I want, what I have to say about it. Sometimes, like, you just have to give the kid what you really think. But most of the time, I always just try to show them what possibilities there are to their question. So it's like, then they can go further themselves into seeing what this possibility is, like, what this is. Just because I work a fine line of, like, you know, if a kid asks me something, they go back to the parents, and the parent comes up to me later and says, hey, why did you influence my kid like this? Like, I can't allow that to happen. I can't really be, like you said, indoctrinating the kids. So it's just more so about showing them, like, what there is.
Oh, I think that's a good perspective.
Putting them in there.
Like, especially, like, I feel like a lot of people have issues with, like, teachers being openly gay, or, like, you know what I mean? Like, there's, like, things because they're like, you're going to indoctrinate your children. But it's like, if we're going to think of the grand scheme of things, indoctrination is what we already have. Just the structures that are in place. Like, women should do this, and men should do this, and this is how it should be, and you should be fitting in the binary, or you should be, because you were born a female, you should be a woman. Like, this is all these kind of indoctrinated aspects that we're already breaking down. So I think it's like, the difference of us opening up that conversation is showing the perspectives that can be in it, which lead to less of that, like, indoctrination versus more of, like, people are capable. Everybody should be capable. And I think kind of just that inclusivity needs to be a part and relevant.
Yeah, one of the things I see for the future is just, it's not necessary for everybody to love one another or anything, although that would be great. It's more so having everybody be respectable and accepting of one another's different views, and being able to, like, find different ways to compromise, because in reality no one's really gonna, to me, in reality I don't think everyone's gonna fully come together within the next couple years and make a big hoopla and it's all gonna be equal. It's gonna take a lot of time.
Yeah, and I think the progress is the little steps. I think what we can do as individuals is just kind of talk about it and put ourselves in discussion and actively learn about our environment, these dynamics ourselves. Because I feel like once we learn about ourselves and how we act and how reasons why we do things, we're able to kind of talk to other people and share that message in general.
Yeah, just more open discussion between people allows people to better understand each other.
Yeah, because I think the whole goal, like, this is our main theme in the Office of Multicultural Learning and the RRC, is just, like, through our rainbow resources, is that what can we do to make somebody's life easier? And what can we enact to lessen that burden for them? Because I think once we breach an understanding with an individual, it lessens that burden and expectation of anxiety with interaction. Because I think a lot of people who, you know, everybody wants to be understood. That's a baseline. Like, how can we make everybody's lives feel comfortable who they are without adding this extra burden to their lives? Because I think it's easy to be, like, individuals to burden others. So.
Yeah, we burden. This is actually something I talked about in some of my communications classes. Like, we unintentionally burden people all the time, or just, like, we unintentionally burden ourselves. Like, one of the things we talked about, this is kind of a random connection, was just, like, gift giving. When you give gifts, there's expectations to, like, give a gift back and things like that. So it's just, when you're setting expectations, there's always going to be some burden.
Yeah, I think that just comes with human interaction in general. And I think today that we kind of uncovered some topics, learned some new things, and just kind of saw that a lot of it is institutional, structural, stigmas. We're built into our own type of family dynamics we might have saw. And, You know, like, there's just very different elements that why people are already thinking that way. So let's, like, figure out how we can get out of that cycle and in general.
Yeah,
but
let's also be more aware of the day-to-day struggles people go through.
That's all we can do. And thank you, Alex, today to join me for this podcast and being on one of our first episodes of season 5. I think that big takeaway is make sure you know what you're saying. What can you do as an individual to less burden someone's life or make them feel less? We always should be empowering people, spread kindness, and try to be understanding. You know, we might be able to grow up in different household environments in different places, and that's very much understandable, and that does take away a little bit of that agency, but actively what you would do as a person and to seek and to learn and to educate yourself, that's on you. And I think it's okay not to know something, and it's okay not to be knowledgeable in everything. Just all you have to be is okay of learning and taking this new information and being open-minded. I think that's the best thing that we can do to close the gap. So thank you guys.
Thank you, Shelly, for having me. This was so educational.
Slay.
It was awesome.
All right. Share love. See you guys.